Good afternoon everybody, and welcome to what's essentially your own personal version of the debate that's been raging right across this country, in country towns and beyond, since the release of the Murray-Darling Basin Authority Guide to a Draft of a Plan about a month ago. The debate is well summed up in the title of this forum, that there is too much focus on the environment in water planning decisions. True or false?
Yeah, I think there is a win-win. I think there's benefits, but we're going to have to stop the adversarial approach to the whole process. 2001 to today, until this rain's improved, in our company we lost about 80 people, just left. That was about $7 million per annum taken out of 3 rural valleys. That's quite huge. And we need to be really careful, because what I see is we're going to take this big cliff edge step if things go the way they're looking like in terms of the legislation, whereas we really need a more of an adaptive approach to it and test some of this stuff. Otherwise, I can see some huge disasters down the track in all those parts that make up the environment. How we manage environmental water, I want to come to this because I think this is a really key issue, and it's an issue that it's so hard to get through to people that live in our capital cities at the terminal of the voting, because it's complex. But it's not just about volume of water. If it was that simple, we'd fix a lot of things, but it's not. It's about land use and all the things that we do out there, vegetation management, the things of transmission, barrages, all those things that have a huge impact. So just sending more water down is not going to fix a lot of the issues out there. It's a much more complex picture. And you've also got to remember that your best practicing environmentalists at the end of the day are going to be the people who are custodians of the land, that are going to be the farmers out there. So the thing has to work for those people. The water for rivers, very important issue here, where the plan is to save 282 gigalitres of water, quite a considerable amount of water. I think they're already up to about 238 of that size of water they've saved. And they've done it by looking at how we operate the system. This one's about how the flows, real-time monitoring of water. These are, to me, the things we should be searching through a fair bit before we just say, well, let's cut, let's slash. There's got to be some other considerations in there. It's very, very important. But it's hard work, and I think some people, I don't want to go there, this is too difficult. But it's damn important for the basin community.
Everybody knows that the way that we've shared water in the basin for decades, it just isn't working. And in less than a century, the amount of water that we extract from the rivers of the Murray-Darling Basin has increased by 500%. And this is just far too much. And as a consequence, our river and wetland health is collapsing. And what about the social and the economic benefits that come from healthy rivers and wetlands? So ACF's own analysis shows that ecosystem services, by which we mean things like water filtration, water storage, and habitat for species that provide valuable services like pollination and insect and pest predation. These services, which are provided by the 16 internationally significant wetlands in the Murray-Darling Basin, are worth about $2.1 billion of economic benefit every year to that surrounding region. So I think that our failure to focus on the environment in those water planning decisions, it's what's caused this horrible predicament that we see today in the Murray-Darling Basin.
I guess the starting point that we begin from as a National Irrigators Council is, of course, that we all need a healthy river. Irrigators rely on it more than most. So that's not really in question. We know it's got to be healthy, but our general proposition is that it has to be in balance. This is a chart that puts together on the same page the level of the lower lakes and the inflows to the Murray-Darling Basin system, or the lower Murray system. So the red line up the top here is the height level of AHD, the actual level of Lake Alexandrina above sea level, and the blue line is inflows to the Murray-Darling, to the lower Murray system. And as you can see, this goes back to sort of January 1990. The height level of the water actually in the lakes has largely been pretty much the same, but as it went through the 2000s, the 90s and 2000s, and the drought started to take hold, through this period here we started to really draw down our reserves in the dams and things, and we hit 2006-07, and anyone who remembers that was an absolute disaster. It simply didn't rain. And surprise, surprise, the lower lakes level absolutely collapsed. And what's happened since? We've had some rain and it's gone back up again, and actually since that's happened the lakes are now back at full supply level at 75 centimetres above AHD. So Murray-Darling Basin Authority went and got advice from the Australian Government Solicitor about the Water Act and what it had to do in developing the Basin Plan. He basically told them, if you believe what the authority is saying, is that the environment does have primacy. Now, Tony Burke went and got legal advice that said environmental, social and economic outcomes can all be optimised. Funnily enough, he got that advice from the same lawyer that the NDBA got their advice from. Constitutional law expert George Williams agreed with the earlier verdict, as did Harvard University's Professor John Briscoe, who's a former head of water at the World Bank and a member of an advisory committee to the NDBA. They said that they thought that the Act does give primacy to the environment and to economic uses of water is listed as subject to. So in other words, subject to doing all the Ramsar treaties, the environmental work, etc., then you can consider the social and economic impacts. So this means we're not giving equal weighting to all three outcomes, the economic, social and environmental.
I think it's obviously one of the biggest issues we've got in the country at the moment, and one that is very difficult both socially and environmentally. And if you think about that in a water planning over more than a century, I would argue that we've had water resource development for the large part of that, and it's only more recently that we've started to get more into the environment. And I guess in what I said on the weekend in particular, I think there is opportunity for a half-win, half-win. I don't think there is an opportunity for win-win here, because this is a very difficult resource to manage. And so the ecological impacts, where the work's been done, is really on some of those major systems. We know about the Coorong and the lower lakes. This is a picture from the Charla floodplain last week. Even though the flood's gone down, you can see the salinity there. A lot of those trees are still dead. That flood that went through Victoria and the Darling has not got onto that floodplain and won't get onto that floodplain. And the Murray-Darling Basin crisis, I believe, is due to inadequate environmental consideration up to now in terms of water planning. Thanks very much.
Ex-Land Water Australia, and I think we, if we existed, could have had an important part of this debate. So the question, and the reason I raised saying ex-Land Water Australia is because the role of research, I think, has been underdone here, and it's certainly come out in the plan, particularly on the socio-economic aspects, but also on the biophysical aspects. Have we done the research?
That we currently don't have a very coherent story to tell on water research in the country. There are lots of bureaucratic wheels spinning around it at the moment, but not very much is actually getting any traction. And that means that you don't actually have young researchers collecting the data that we need to make for what I think we all agree we need to do, and that's adaptive management of these working rivers. And look, to me, that is the biggest problem that we've got in going. No, I won't say
moving forward.
Something like that.
Is how do we get this back on track? How do we cool off the anger, reassure the townspeople, and try and take some of the heat and the polarising out of this and get a decent discussion going? Does anyone on the panel have an idea about that, or anyone on the floor?